Everyone, hope you're having a nice day. Today we are going to talk about one of my favorite development stories, and that is the playmaking of Malik Monk. And this video was inspired by this pass. I was watching this Kings Magic game from late March the other day, and Malik Monk did this absolutely ridiculous shit, hanging in midair and whipping the ball out to Harrison Barnes. Like, how did he not see this window and make this play, hanging in the air, perfect accuracy, falling away from the play? That's an absurd one right there. And it's kind of crazy because Malik Monk was not this kind of passer in college and before the NBA. So let's break down his development, and subscribe would be awesome. Let's get 150 likes on this one. That would be sick, and I'll do another one of these videos for you guys. So Malik Monk was not a great primary ball handler in college. He didn't get to do it a ton at Kentucky, and we'll talk a lot about his role constraints, but Monk wasn't super great against pressure. He would miss a lot of reads, but his usage was very constrained to these curl handoff type plays. Again, he kind of has Bam right here, but he didn't end up making the pass, and he just kind of throws into a defender right there. And the playmaking numbers wouldn't have ever suggested much for Malik Monk here, right? Over his college days, where Monk had low assist rate, fine assist to turnover stuff, nothing crazy. And then in the NBA, for Monk's first however many years, until he got to Sacramento, really, the passing wasn't crazy. But 29 assist rate this last year, 26 2 years ago. The passing has taken a huge jump, and that's really fueled him to being an incredibly good complementary offensive player. So let's go ahead and talk about this passing development. And there were some flashes of playmaking ability in college. It wasn't like he didn't do anything. A lot of it was off-ball stuff where he'd use his burst and explosion to get downhill, and this was a really awesome pass right there. He always had this kind of sense for interior passes where Monk is kind of almost no-looking this one. He's trying to look back at Bam, but he's moving towards the rim and throws it behind his head to Adebayo. Obviously, Bam was an incredibly good target for interior playmaking, just with how giant and his long arms and his great wingspan and catch radius and stuff. But I like how we can see the baby steps of, for example, a play like this where Monk is, acrobatically hanging in the air on the baseline and makes a crazy pass out to Barnes where, nothing crazy here, but Monk using his handle here and burst to get baseline, hanging in the air and finding his man for an open three. And I think Monk is another great example of my working theory that advantage creation is critical for playmaking development, but development in other ways, as Monk's able to keep his handle alive off of this curl action. And this is the thing with a lot of Kentucky guards, that Cal kind of hides their skill sets because of how narrow their roles are. Monk was just doing this shit. He was curling off of screens, shooting the ball. A great job keeping his handle alive and finding Bam on the lob there. Like I said, having Bam as a lob target, I think, was a really nice thing for Monk's passing development. And this was maybe the best pass I saw him make in college, where Monk picks up the ball, and it looks like he wants to hit Bam on this roll, but he notices that the low man steps up to Bam, so he whips this through traffic, gets it to, it's Derek Willis. What a name for the layup there. There was some stuff, and like I said, Monk could do these empty side open pick and rolls, right? There's not really a help defender to read, so Monk can very simply just lob it up into space and trust that Bam is going to go get that ball, which happened very often. Again, just kind of a reckless, you could say reckless decision, but I think Monk was good at knowing his personnel, right? Bam is an incredible lob catcher, and he knew that if he just chucked it up, there was a good chance that Bam was going to go get it and finish these plays. And again, we see the advantage creation here helping Monk's passing. He beats his first defender, forces a rotation here off of Bam's man, and that allows him to pass into that window that he was able to open with his really great advantage creation and driving and explosion and stuff. But most of his assists in college were just very simple manufactured stuff. He'd throw an entry pass after coming off of the loop action right there. Very simple stuff like that. Or he would, drive and he would attack, win with his burst, help with shade at the nail, one pass away for an easy De'Aaron Fox 3. Like, very simple, basic stuff, but I think Monk having like really valuable special traits outside of the playmaking allowed him to stick around in the league and develop that. And the shooting and like the scoring was always there, as Monk just had incredible versatile shooting touch. We all know about the pull-up shot making, but he was an incredible movement shooter too. Could sprint off of screens, fire over contests, like contort his body in midair in a bunch of different ways. He was a dynamite shooter and a great athlete. And that combination of like versatile shot making on and off the ball and real explosion and burst is a really valuable combination of skills that we've seen a lot of players use to great benefit. And Monk was an awesome athlete. He won with his first step. He could hang in the air and finish through contact. His touch with both hands was fantastic. I talked about touch as an important indicator for star development, but again, we see like he probably could have passed the ball out, and that might have been like, or even lobbed to Bam here. And we'll talk about the progression of his laydown passing as well once we get into what he's doing in the NBA. But again, we see Monk always like starting on the baseline, curling off of screens, doing all this stuff. But on this play, the play kind of breaks down and Monk's able to use his burst to turn the corner. Again, we see him hanging in the air and finishing with his left. He was such a great vertical athlete. He could hang off of one, hang off of two, use that to finish with touch. And of course, the burst and the explosion was great. He could dunk the ball in the half court, get by defenders easily with his first step. And as I've said plenty of times, this, I think, helped him develop as a passer. It's a lot easier to get these reps as a playmaker when you're forcing the defense to rotate every time you touch the ball, right? You can't develop as a passer if nobody ever gets open. But because Monk is winning with his first step and you have to respect his scoring, what a crazy like scoop touch layup hanging in the air, that made it easier to play make. And Monk's handle was definitely raw. He had flashes, but it wasn't super complicated, and he wasn't like a super refined finisher yet. Like the touch was obvious, the explosion was obvious, but like he wins with burst here. He gets downhill, he gets in the restricted area and just tries kind of a tough reverse. Like the decision making at the rim wasn't always spectacular, but it was definitely clear that Monk had great physical tools in terms of finishing. And once again, we see the ridiculous lefty touch. Malik Monk was so good. Double cross into this lefty scoop here. And again, maybe you can argue you should have tried to pass the Bam here, but that is just a crazy finish. And the touch was fantastic. But for, Malik's early career in Charlotte, in LA as well, he was kind of just like a microwave scorer. And the playmaking still had a lot of the same issues, just questionable decision making, especially outside of the context of Kentucky, where he was no longer confined to just coming off of curls and pin downs and stuff, where he was actually attacking closeouts with a spaced floor. And he has a wide open shooter right here. He tries to like leave his feet, I guess it's MCW, leave his feet. Not really sure what exactly was going on there. The decision making and the playmaking were not great for Monk early in his career. It definitely took him a while to develop, as you can see him struggle in these more traditional like pick and roll type actions where not really even a good screen, but Zeller's rolling to the rim, and when your lob threat isn't Bam Adebayo against college defenders, it's a little more difficult to find these windows and to hit these passing angles. And Monk definitely struggled quite a bit with that early in his career, but there was some basic flashes early in Charlotte where Monk would drive and draw a double team, make a simple pick and roll read, and put Hernan Gomez there in a nice spot to finish. And this next play I just thought was funny because it was Malik Monk and Dwight Howard on the Hornets against Enes Kanter. Like, that's crazy. But we see the lob passing, which is always such a strength of his. Monk was always great blending his like drives and using his threat as a scorer to hit lob passes, and that's what he does here. And Dwight ends up finishing. But fast forward to, 7-8 years later in Sacramento this past year, where Monk's playmaking was phenomenal. And of course, he's always been and still is an incredible scorer. we see what happens when the handle has gotten tighter and cleaner, and he's able to just get to any spot on the floor he wants with his burst and explosion. And again, we see the explosive leaping off of 1 foot, hang in the air finish with his left hand. That stuff was all present on the college tape, and it's obviously translated. But what that has led to is Monk's passing development. And the basic pick and roll stuff has gotten so much better. And playing on the Kings has really helps him. They run a really great offense. And Mike Brown has empowered him to be a playmaker. Great usage of the rescreen here with Sabonis, and he hits the pocket pass. That was not in his repertoire. As we saw earlier, the only kind of really, Monk was pretty much just lob passes in college, where now he has added this different passing delivery, this pocket pass element to better exploit different types of windows. And having a roll man and a screener and a rebounder like Sabonis, I think, has been a huge help for him. He never really played with a big like Sabonis, at least to my recollection, but he can still throw lobs to guys like JaVale McGee. That was always in his wheelhouse, but it's more controlled now. Again, we see Monk setting up this screen. It looks like he's going to go use it. Grant Williams jabs out, but Monk rejects the screen, creates an advantage, lobs it up to JaVale McGee there. And we can see that the game has absolutely slowed down for Malik Monk. But again, we see how good he has become at lobbing off of his drives. Reject. Again, we see a reject here, and it looks like Monk is going to go for a score here, and the defense is probably thinking that, but he's going to kind of flick it over his head. He always had that like overhead flick, the same thing we saw in that early pass against Kansas, but now he's honed that skill and turned it into a real like deadly threat along with his scoring. And a great pocket pass here, kind of a tight window here, but Monk is going to bounce it right to Sabonis, who ends up finishing through traffic. It's these simple progressions that, Monk didn't have as a college player, but because he had the obvious creation talent, he could add, and I think the touch is a big part of it, he could add these more simple pocket pass type plays, the kind of more coachable reads. But then there's this stuff that's, not really as coachable, where Monk is putting his defender in jail, hesitating, exploding to draw the help defender, and laying the ball down to McGee at the last second. This was great deception, great hesitation that Monk just didn't really play with that much as a prospect, but he had the tools to do it, and it's awesome to see him develop into this kind of player. Again, we see Monk creating an advantage with his burst and with his explosion, drawing help and laying the ball down with this, maybe not the most accurate pass in the world, and he still does love these like overhead dimes, but McGee is a big target, and he's able to find his man right there for an open layup. So this kind of playmaking development has really changed the calculus for Monk, as now he's not just like a microwave scorer, right? He's a legitimate secondary creator, and he was really great for the Kings in that role and got a deserving contract this offseason. I'm honestly surprised some teams didn't try to pay him more, given what Monk is able to do as a standstill creator with a screen, right? Snaking back. Actually, no, he doesn't snake here. I misremember this, but great Euro step, hangs in the air, and again is able to find Keegan Murray on the cut right there. But Monk has come such a long way from his time in college, and we'll return to this play, which once again sparked this whole video. Crazy to see Monk now hanging in the air and hitting creative live dribble reads all over the floor, when that's just not who he was as a prospect. I do think Monk is like a very, very awesome development story, and I don't know if I necessarily would have predicted this passing leap at the time given who he was, but he definitely had some playmaking capability. And because of his great advantage creation skills, his burst, his driving, his scoring from all over the floor, he stuck around in the league long enough to land in a context that really helped unlock his playmaking. And of course, he probably made tons of progress on his own that we never saw to work on that passing. But the foundation was there, and Monk is such an electric prospect and one of the most fun college players to watch. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'm really excited to watch Monk this next year in Sacramento and see if he can keep building on what he's done over the last couple years. And I think it's an interesting kind of prospects lessen that. Just because these guys aren't high volume passers, especially Kentucky guards, right? If their roles are limited, maybe in a bigger role at some point in the league they can do more. And Monk certainly ended up doing a lot more.